Hello and welcome to WTF, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, where we talk about writing and reading and all the things in between. And today is editing.
Yeah.
So, I am Aubin, the author of The Second Nature of Indigo, which is a historical fiction coming-of-age novel set in the Victorian era.
It's very cool. I am Mariella May. I'm currently working on a fantasy duology. It's not yet out, but we're editing it.
Right now.
Which is one of the things that's really inspired us to make this video.
Yeah.
So this is about first draft mistakes, and we are dealing with a lot of them right now.
Yeah.
We are on the first real passive editing. I've done some editing before, but especially the part we're editing right now, I have not done much for. So
and that's okay. I feel like you have to start there, and that's completely fine. Like, the book is amazing. It's just that some parts of it need more work than others.
Yeah.
So if you're at that part in your book,
and you're just
don't let it get you
overwhelmed,
down.
and you're like, this is like my main character, the part we're editing at, she is a completely different character than I had it in the first draft. Like, and it's just all the entire circumstance is way harsher and just it's actually kind of hilarious to work on it.
So today we're going to be talking about two major kinds of mistakes. There are story mistakes, and then there are wordcraft mistakes. So I say we start with story. How does that sound?
Yeah.
Okay. So starting with story, we have mistakes relying on plot. So sometimes when you're
explain other than
character or emotional drive.
So that's like if a character and another character are having a relationship, and then they're just problems are thrown at them, and they never ever have like discord between each other or discord with each other.
It doesn't. You're saying it doesn't really follow through emotionally.
And then we never get any side of the characters like actually having to deal with problems between each other.
Yeah, that's so funny. Sometimes we do this. We write something down and then we think of the same thing in two different ways. So I wasn't thinking about that at all, although that is amazing. So when I thought of stakes relying on plot instead of on emotionality, I thought like, this is supposed to be suspenseful because they're about to die, instead of like the emotionality of they're about to die, because there's a very specific emotional protocol when you are about to die. If you're a certain type of person.
And I think that you can have a lot of creativity.
I am in love with this person. And it's like, but why?
Yeah.
Oh, which leads us, it's a great time to mention that we have
a video
about Romance 101, how to write great love stories on our channel right now.
So if you're also dealing with a first draft and you're like, okay, this romance is a little iffy, I would highly encourage watching that video.
Yeah. So it's so funny that they're two great.
We often come up with completely different answers for
which
the same
makes
things.
editing really fun.
So
the next one is telling versus showing who a character is. Or is becoming.
I think a really classical example of this is when the guy is just dark and brooding, and you know this because when you meet him, it's like, oh, he's dark and brooding.
Dark clothes.
Yeah, he's wearing like a cloak, and you can't see his face, and he's all grumpy, and his chiseled jaw is clenched. Like, but it isn't even that. It isn't even that descriptive. It's just like
he was sitting alone.
Yeah, it's like, and I knew the character, the POV character suddenly knows everything about this guy. And it's just like, oh my gosh, I know that, like, he's probably an assassin or something. And then she's right, or he's right. It's just like, how did you get that? And I think that flows into, like, little things. Like, let them be found throughout the story. Don't let them just be like, oh, it's this character, and you know everything about them right now. And this is, like, their entire character. And then it's just like, you know, they follow their character for the rest of the story. Because that's really bland.
That's super bland.
Super bland.
What I would think of was telling versus showing who a character is that at the beginning, they want to tell you exactly who the POV or main character is right away, like as fast as they can. To me, that's not super important. I find it more fun when, like, you find out who the POV character is throughout the book, like, and show me who the POV character is. Even though they're telling their own story, they leave hints about themselves in how they see the world and how they see themselves and how they see their family and their friends. So don't tell me, like, I'm a very insecure person, so I do X thing. It's like, show me how you, like, bite your nails. Show me how you always make sure you have the perfect makeup look. Otherwise, you feel insecure about it the entire time. Like, something about that, and show me how you change as well.
And also, along with, like, the making sure the makeup looks perfect.
Yeah.
Connecting things. Like, they're super anxious, and that also leads them to be perfectionists. Like, they need it to be perfect.
Yeah.
Or just, like, everything needs to fit this way. And then if you have a character who's just, like, happy-go-lucky, it's also, like, they just don't care. Their clothes are loose. They don't... It's just, they're vibing. They're happy with it. So... I think that's another thing. Like, their body, how they act, how they dress, how they present themselves will tell you a lot about a character while not telling you.
Yeah.
Like, if you can see their head as they're getting dressed, like, what are they thinking about?
Yeah.
What do they want to be? What do they want to present like? So,
I was just thinking of a scene.
Just never be afraid to really get in the head of your character.
Yeah.
And also... don't worry if you don't know a character when you're writing it. I have a character. I did not know much about him when I was writing the first draft.
Which one?
I don't want to spoil anything.
Is it R?
No.
No, it's not R.
I can't say the first letter because it's multiple characters have the first letter. Processing. She'll figure it out.
Yeah, I'll figure it out.
So, he is so vastly different than how I originally thought of him. Scenes with him are true to his character. Like, I wrote some scenes that were just flowing with it and just vibing, and it is like the character is now. But other scenes, just completely off. Like,
oh, I think maybe.
So,
we'll see.
Don't be afraid to scrap dialogue or scrap description and just rewrite it. I have had to scrap so much dialogue because the characters are so different.
Yeah. Just today, we've done, like, I don't know, 4 pieces of dialogue, just taken them out and rewritten them. Yeah.
Like,
it was so funny. Like, going along, I was just like, that is just not even close to who this character is now. Omitting character moments that would naturally happen. It's very easy to do because if they're not there, you don't really think of them. But then somebody else comes along and they're like, wait, why didn't this character do this? Like, that's really weird that they didn't do that. Like, today, I was editing and I was like, it's weird that this character didn't say goodbye to his friend. And it's easy to M. When M was saying goodbye to I was like, why isn't he saying goodbye? And it's an easy mistake to make because he's not really supposed to be there. And, like, he's a quiet guy, so sometimes you just forget about him. And it's like, but he wouldn't do it. So there are moments where, in my book, too, I think I omitted tons of them. It's been a while since I've edited Indigo. I published it, so I don't need to edit it anymore.
It's already out there. Another thing that can easily be like forgotten or omitted is your character's power. I have a character who is very strong now. Yeah. Wasn't before. And as we're editing it, past me fell into them not being strong so regularly. And I have another character who has special abilities and he doesn't use them regularly.
Oh yeah.
And so it's so it's not a normal thing. It's not a natural thing. So you're like, oh, duh. A human, like a normal person, wouldn't do that. Yeah. But it's not a normal person. Yeah. And that's especially, again, going back, having another set of eyes on your work is so important. Because to you're just like, what?
And it's like, as soon as I mention it, you're like, oh, yeah, of course. I can think of exactly how I would write that scene, blah-da-da-da, and then you do it. But
it's sometimes hard to separate, like, your original thought and what's now on the page.
Yeah, and sometimes there's a flow you get into when you're writing. Like that scene, you had a flow, and that goodbye scene didn't really make it in there. And it's not that it doesn't belong, it's just that you forgot.
Always have someone else look at it. That is my highest suggestion. I have had, first of all, when I was writing my first draft, I was reading it to my entire family. Yeah. So I had all of their ears on it. I mean, I was reading it out loud, so... Yeah. They would give me suggestions constantly. We help me figure out stuff. And now that we're like more specific, going in deep with it, again, having another person is fundamental. Like, I tried to edit it. I was like, yep, this looks good. And then
I go through and I'm like, is this edited?
Yeah, no, it was. I read over the entire. I read over. I didn't edit it at all. I was like, this.
I did one of those passes.
Yeah, it's just like solid.
Sometimes it's the opposite. Sometimes, like, my next book is very short. Mm-hmm. Every scene is just a punch in the gut, and so I'm very
in your head about it.
In my head about it, and I don't know what to do, and that is when reading to Ella is just so helpful, because I read her a scene and I'm like, I don't know how I feel about this scene. I don't love it. It's conflicted because it doesn't go along with the flow I had before. Mm-hmm. It doesn't fit with how I imagined this story. And then I read it to her and she's like, no, that belongs. Brilliant. You have to keep it.
Yeah, and sometimes just hearing someone, like having someone else appreciate it, you're like, okay, now I want to have it fit in.
Well, and it was like, reading your story out loud to other people, really different experience than reading it in your head, because there's a lot in your head that sometimes doesn't get on the page. So reading it aloud is a new way of appreciating and critiquing it.
Mm-hmm. Yes, one last thing I'm going to say about story, especially with first drafts, going back to what you just said, don't be afraid to scrap stuff. I scrapped the end of my first book.
Entirely.
The complete start of...
And all of what she had for book 2.
Actually, yeah, all of book 2.
So it was probably like 20,000 words.
At least. Well, that's just counting book 2.
You had 20,000 words of book 2?
I think I did.
Whoa.
And I had all of the end, which was probably another...
Yeah. Wow.
15,000 words.
Yeah.
So I probably scrapped 35,000 words to change this end and change the entire, what would be the next book. And it is so much better.
Oh, it's great.
And it was scary, obviously. Better. I was like, no, I like what I wrote, and there were great scenes in there that now
such great scenes
have to go away. And
that's the sad thing. Sometimes you're like,
thing.
oh, what is good? And it is good, but is it great?
Yeah.
We like Steve. We do. But we don't love Steve.
Always remember Stranger Things. Yeah. That one wacky guy in Stranger Things.
Yeah. Okay, so moving on to wordcraft. So, I wrote a thing about why wordcraft is important, but it's hidden in my notebook. So, I guess we won't read it right now. So the overall thing that I divided wordcraft into is active and passive. And if you don't think about these things critically, it's going to lead to all the mistakes that we are going to talk about. And we are editing these things constantly in Ella's book. I had to edit them in my book. It happens a lot. And you see it sometimes in books that are already published, in movies. Oh my goodness, I have a few examples of movies that flopped that I think could have done way better if they had just switched from active to passive. Well,
or passive to active.
Yeah, sorry. It almost never works to go back to passive. It's usually better to go to active. I think it works
in a couple things.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially if the only times that I would really switch from active to passive is if there's just too much. If it's too much for your readers.
Or if it's just not important. It's is it important for us to see how they get dressed today again?
Yeah, it's like, do we really need them making this tea or this like,
nah.
Is this breakfast scene necessary? So just taking out things that are fluff and like not real substance can really make your book or movie or whatever you're making so much smoother.
Description might be another one of those things where sometimes you do have to switch it to passive. Yeah. I think passive description is actually sometimes better.
It's really cool. I think both are really cool.
Both are really good. And sometimes you have to know when you use active description and you use passive. So what do we mean active and passive description?
That's a good... Something how I would divide active and passive is I had a scene where it's like after the fact. It's written after the fact. But it flows from the previous thing. So it's like bloody-da-dee-da happened and then they bloody-da-dee-da. And then it just moves on. So it just has like a short sentence to recap a physical thing that they did.
Oh, okay.
Just in past. I mean, my book is in past, but it's in past. So...
It's in passive past.
Yeah. So it's already done. So it would be like the difference between like I am picking up the pot and pouring the tea to I poured myself a cup of tea.
Yeah.
It's like I already did that. versus like I am doing it. It's in the action. And sometimes my favorite place to put active things is in between dialogue.
Yeah.
If your characters are just standing there talking to each other, it gets really, really boring.
It does.
So if they are...
And it's also very non-visual. So you start losing the visual. It becomes just...
So having grounding things, even if they are small, even if they are fluff, in those scenes is really important. That's where I would use fluffy, pouring myself tea kind of dialogue. Description in a scene.
And this is a good place where you can put in character details, like if they bite their nails, you can like see how that affects how they pour the tea. I don't know.
Or it could be if they have anxiety. I think it's more of the deeper thing. It's like if they have anxiety, are they worried when they pour the tea? Are they worried they're going to drop it or break it? Do their hands slip? Do they get anxious about it? So all of those little character descriptions within a simple scene can really, really make your character alive.
Absolutely. So one problem I had, I actually wrote this point down a while ago when I was reading this book, and it's a first-person past, I think. So this book I was reading, it was like, I saw da-da-da-da-da, and, or I heard this thing happen in the next room. And I was like...
I would say that's passive.
That is boring. It's passive. It's like, if it's a first-person narrative, I would never use I noted or I heard unless I want to emphasize the character hearing it. Like, for example, if it's like a romantic scene, if you want to emphasize that this character is like noting somebody else, then
having
like I noticed or they noticed emphasizes the intention of the scene. But otherwise, the reader is already kind of associating with your character on a mental level, hopefully. And if you say, like, a crash sounded through the wall, that's enough. We understand that your character heard it. If we heard it, they heard it. I'm using said.
And other
speech tags.
Because a lot of people are like, don't use said, use these instead. And then it's like, he growled every sentence.
Or questioned, answered, begged. There are some
that I really enjoy. That could be our next video. We could do like ranking.
Oh yeah, that would be hilarious.
There are some that I really think add to a story, and sometimes just said or growled or whispered do add to the story. But it's with intention. Are they really feeling that? Is that the best way to describe it? Is there any visual cue that you could also use or use instead? Like, often when it's just like he growled, well, what face is he making? Is his jaw clenched? Is he annoyed? Can you see the anger in him? Like, why? That's always the question that bothers me that people don't answer when like dialogue happens. It's like, oh, they whispered it. Why are they whispering it? And sometimes that is answered in their statement, but a lot of times I wish I had more of a visual on what they're doing.
Yeah, I feel like if you look at the early works of even someone like Suzanne Collins, in her first series, Chronicles of Underland, well, anyway, in her first book, she uses said. I remember reading that book, and I was like, did she just use said 4 times in a row? And it's a great book. It's so still good. A great book. It's
love
amazing.
The Gregor series so much. I don't love the ending. I'm sorry, Suzanne Collins, but what was up with that ending? Even great books have these problems. And I mean, again, these things can be useful. If you use said in a place that's good and you don't know who's saying it, and then you're like, oh, Bloody-Dot said it.
Yeah, sometimes you avoid speech tags and then you have no idea who's saying what. Like sometimes in Ella's book, I'm just like, who said this? I have no idea.
Yeah. And this can cause a lot of problem for your reader and your audiobook reader if you get it read by an audio. Sometimes when I'm hearing listening to an audiobook, I'm like, I think that was the other character.
Yeah.
But because that character just responded to their own question. And sometimes it is answered, like, obviously someone's asking a question, someone's answering the question. But sometimes, it's confusing. Sometimes if it's like, oh, and then says the answer. It might be themselves answering their own question.
Yeah, so. I would say when you do use speech tags, because there was a point in time when I was like, I'm never using speech tags. That was dumb.
It is dumb. Speech tags are very important.
Here's the problem I ran into. I could never, it was so much harder to get momentum in a scene because there is a time for being slow and there's a time for really getting into the depth of how they're pouring tea between this question they're asking. And then there is the time when there's so little time between when they are speaking. It's just like, I would say use speech tags to convey tempo or, I was going to say emotion, but mostly tempo.
I mean, yeah, also emotion, because there's a lot of emotion that goes into a speech tag.
Yeah.
Some of my favorites are, like, countered, debated. Like, it shows this tilting of this person. Like, it shows that they don't agree with the previous statement without being like, they didn't agree with the previous statement. So it gives a lot of character in one word, which it correlates to tempo.
Yeah.
When you need to go fast, speech tags can be really great. Find what works for you and get another pair of eyes on it. Because sometimes it will work for you and they will have no idea what you are talking about. So biggest advice from me, get someone else to look at it.
That's good. Yeah. That makes me feel good. Because I'm the second pair of eyes. Passive description also leads to description dumping.
Oh,
so don't description dump.
Yeah, if you, again, going back to kind of like that, looking at that grungy guy in the tavern or whatever it is, it's like, ooh, just he was standing like this, and so making all of these assumptions about him, and then just like picking out all of these things and telling like massive stories about this one guy who you know nothing about, or like, especially I find this a lot in first-person POV, and it's like, hello, I'm blah-de-da-de-da, and explains everything about themselves.
Including what they're wearing. Yeah. How they said everything.
And this, it's like doing the thing that we said earlier about like what they wear, how that's influenced by their character. It's like, I wear this because I'm a grungy teen and I don't like being near anyone and I like people thinking I'm emo. And it's like, okay, slow down. I picked up this book 2 seconds ago.
Continuing off of that, there's this one mistake that I read somewhere, and it was like, this is how I know instantly that this is a beginner writer and whatever. And it was like, if your first sentence of your book is a long description of the scene you're setting up, this does happen. I think I picked up a book one time and after hearing that, and it was just a long, it was like a paragraph long. Just a short paragraph, but a paragraph long of setting up this scene. It was like, this house on a prairie, but inside the house you see golden light spilling out behind, like, crocheted curtains or something.
And I think that can work in a certain sense. Again, most of these things you can break if you're doing it fully.
Definitely.
And I think one of the biggest things with breaking things fully is doing it with confidence and doing it with a style. Often when I read books that set up stuff like that, and do it well, they're doing it in a very almost theatrical fairy tale way of writing the story, which is so beautiful. I love that style so much. So if that's your style, I mean, even if it's not your style, but you open with that setting, do it confidently and do it fully. Just, I think that where things get stiff is when people are trying to hold themselves back.
Oh,
just write it,
interesting,
and then look back on it later. Just figure out the balance that your book needs and give it what it needs. And get another set of eyes on it.
Okay. That was our video on first draft mistakes and how to fix them. So we hope you enjoyed it. Yeah. If you want, we have a whole playlist on our YouTube channel about writing advice. We'll put it above. And we also do book reviews.
Yeah, we do book tea every Friday. So we talk about books that we like and why we like them and rank them. I mean, not rank them. We rank them. We're not formally ranking
much
them.
Better than something else.
We're not formally ranking them. We just talk about books that we like.
It's just our opinion.
So yeah, thank you guys for coming. Just so thankful that you guys are here.
And wish you all the best in your writing.
Yeah. I hope you guys join us again. I would love it if you stuck around and were here when I released my book.
Yeah.
So
Which is going to be super exciting. We'll have updates and information, blah, da, da, da.
every week.
Yeah, every week. And so you definitely won't miss it if you stick around.
Mm-hmm.
And trust me, you don't want to miss it. So,
Thank you guys so much.
bye. See you tomorrow for Thursday of WTF.
Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Ha ha ha. Bye.